The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal spires of Velkara as Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold stone wall of the alley. Her hands shook as she clutched the stolen medical scanner, its blue light flickering weakly. 3 days without food. 4 days since they'd stripped her of her healer's mark and cast her out like a diseased animal. The sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. Heavy, deliberate, the distinctive 4-beat rhythm of Kethri patrol guards. "There," came a voice speaking the guttural Kethri language. "The human filth who dared touch our sacred children." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She understood every word. 6 years of living among the Kethri had taught her their language better than most humans ever learned it. 6 years of saving their lives, healing their wounds, earning their trust, all destroyed in a single moment of desperation. The first guard rounded the corner, his chitinous armor gleaming like black metal in the sunlight, his 4 eyes fixed on her with unmistakable hatred. Behind him came 2 more, their razor-sharp mandibles clicking in what she'd learned was their expression of disgust. "Stand and face judgment, human," the lead guard commanded. Sarah stood slowly, raising her empty hands. The scanner remained hidden behind her back. "I meant no harm. The child was dying." "Silence," the guard's secondary arms flexed, revealing the bone spurs that could punch through steel. "You violated the sacred law. No human may touch a Kethri child. The elders have spoken. You will face the trial of pain." The trial of pain. Sarah had seen it once when she'd first arrived on Velkara. The condemned was strapped to the agony frame, their bones methodically broken while the crowd watched. Few survived. None walked again. "Please," she whispered. "I only wanted to help. Your healers said the child couldn't be saved, but I knew." The guard's primary arm shot forward, backhanding her across the face with enough force to send her sprawling. Blood filled her mouth as she hit the ground, the scanner skittering across the stone. "You knew nothing," he snarled. "The child died as fate intended. Your interference was blasphemy." But that was the lie that would destroy everything Sarah had worked for. The child hadn't died. She'd saved him using techniques the Kethri healers didn't understand. Human medicine, they called it, forbidden magic. As the guards moved to surround her, Sarah made a choice that would change 2 worlds forever. She grabbed the scanner and activated its emergency beacon, a signal that would reach the human colony ship orbiting Velkara, a signal that would bring down everything. "You want to see human magic," she said, wiping blood from her lips. "You're about to get more than you bargained for." The scanner's beacon pulsed once, twice, then went silent. But it was enough. Somewhere above the clouds, systems were already responding to her desperate call. The lead guard raised his weapon, a plasma rifle that could reduce a human to ash in seconds. "Your blasphemous words cannot save you now." "Maybe not," Sarah said, "but they can save your people." Before the guard could respond, a shadow passed overhead. Then another. The whine of atmospheric processors filled the air as the first human dropships broke through the cloud cover. But these weren't rescue ships. These were military vessels, their hulls bristling with weapons that could level city blocks. The guard's 4 eyes went wide as he looked up at the approaching ships. When he looked back at Sarah, his expression had changed from hatred to fear. "What have you done?" Sarah pulled herself to her feet, her medical training automatically cataloging her injuries. Broken nose, possible concussion, cracked ribs, but she was alive and that was enough. "I've given you a choice," she said. "Let me heal your people or watch my people destroy them." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah knew it was more complicated than that. The human colony ship Meridian carried 5,000 refugees from Earth's dying ecosystem. They needed Velkara's resources to survive. The Kethri needed human medical knowledge to save their species from the plague that was slowly killing their children. The problem was, neither side was willing to admit they needed the other. The first dropship touched down at the far end of the alley, its engines kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. Armed figures in environmental suits began pouring out, their weapons already trained on the Kethri guards. "Stand down," came an amplified voice. "By order of Captain Morrison, all Kethri are to step away from the human civilian." Sarah closed her eyes. Captain Morrison, the man who'd wanted to take Velkara by force from the beginning, the man who saw the Kethri as obstacles to be removed rather than neighbors to be understood. This wasn't rescue. This was the beginning of a war that would destroy everything she'd tried to build. But as the human soldiers advanced and the Kethri guards raised their weapons, Sarah noticed something that made her heart skip. The lead guard was limping, favoring his left side, and the way he held himself. He was injured, badly injured. The kind of injury that the Kethri healers couldn't treat but human medicine could fix in minutes. Sometimes, Sarah realized, the best way to start a conversation was to help someone who was trying to kill you. She took a step forward, directly between the two groups of armed figures. "Wait," she called out. "Everyone just wait." The standoff stretched like a held breath. 20 human soldiers in tactical armor faced 3 Kethri guards whose natural carapaces were tougher than most body armor. Sarah stood in the middle, unarmed and bleeding, knowing that the next few seconds would determine whether this ended in understanding or slaughter. "Dr. Chen, step away from the hostiles," came Captain Morrison's voice through his suit's external speakers. The captain himself emerged from the lead dropship, his angular face visible through his helmet's visor. "We're here to extract you." "They're not hostiles," Sarah called back. They're Xeno scum who have been torturing our people for 6 months," Morrison cut her off. His weapon never wavered from the lead Kethri guard. "Intelligence reports say they've been using humans for medical experiments." Sarah's blood ran cold. What intelligence reports? But she already knew. The same reports that had painted her as a traitor when she tried to share human medical techniques with the Kethri healers. The same reports that had convinced the human council that the Kethri were monsters who needed to be conquered, not partners who needed to be understood. The lead Kethri guard, Thekmer, she remembered his name now, shifted his weight again. The movement sent a ripple of pain across his features that was visible even through his alien physiology. His breathing was shallow, rapid, classic signs of internal bleeding. "You're hurt," Sarah said to him in fluent Kethri. Thekmer's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. "You speak properly." "She speaks the enemy's tongue," Morrison growled. Further evidence of her collaboration. Sarah ignored the captain. "How long since the injury?" 3 days, Thekmer admitted reluctantly. "A construction accident, the healers say." He paused, his 4 eyes darting between Sarah and the human soldiers. "They say I will die slowly, as fate wills it." "Fate doesn't will anything," Sarah said, "but I can fix it if you let me." "Dr. Chen, step away from the target," Morrison ordered. "That's a direct command." "He's not a target," Sarah snapped, spinning to face the captain. "He's a patient, and if you want to prevent a war, you'll let me do what I came here to do." "What you came here to do?" Morrison's laugh was bitter. "You came here to play doctor with the enemy. You came here to betray your own species. Well, congratulations, Doctor. Your little humanitarian mission just signed the death warrant for 5,000 colonists." Sarah felt the world shift around her. "What are you talking about?" "The Kethri Council voted," Morrison continued. "Unanimous decision. All humans are to be expelled from Velkara within 48 hours, or they'll activate their planetary defense grid, the same grid that can punch holes through battle cruisers." Behind her, she heard Thekmer translate Morrison's words for the other guards. Their mandibles clicked rapidly, the Kethri equivalent of nervous laughter. "The humans lie," one of them said in their own language. "The elders would never threaten the Skydwellers unless—" "Unless what?" Sarah asked in Kethri. The guard looked at her with something approaching respect. "Unless the Skydwellers plan to take our world by force." Sarah's mind raced. "Captain, did you bring a full military escort?" Morrison's silence was answer enough. "How many ships?" she pressed. "Enough to secure human interests on Velkara," Morrison said finally. "You brought a battle fleet." It wasn't a question. Sarah could see it in Morrison's posture, in the way his soldiers held their weapons. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was the opening move of an invasion. "The Kethri have resources we need to survive," Morrison said. "They've made it clear they won't share, so we'll take what we need and relocate them to reservation zones." "You mean concentration camps?" "I mean survival," Morrison's voice hardened. "Those are your choices, Doctor. Human survival or alien comfort. Choose." Sarah looked at Thekmer, saw the pain written across his features, saw the way he was trying to hide his weakness from his own people. Then she looked at Morrison, saw the certainty in his eyes, the absolute conviction that he was saving humanity by destroying everything she'd worked for. 6 years of building trust, one patient at a time. 6 years of proving that humans and Kethri could work together, could learn from each other. All of it about to be swept away by fear and politics. But maybe there was another way. "Thekmer," she said in Kethri, "you're dying, your healers can't save you, I can." "The sacred law," one of the other guards began. "The sacred law says no human may touch a Kethri child," Sarah interrupted. "It says nothing about warriors. It says nothing about adults who choose to be treated." Thekmer's breathing was becoming more labored. Whatever was bleeding inside him was getting worse. Maybe minutes left, maybe hours, but not long. "If I heal you," Sarah continued, "will you listen to what I have to say? Will you help me prevent a war that will destroy both our peoples?" "Dr. Chen," Morrison warned, "step away from the alien or I'll have you shot for treason." Sarah looked back at the captain. "You'll shoot an unarmed doctor for trying to prevent a war. I'll shoot a traitor for aiding the enemy." "Then you'll have to shoot me." Sarah knelt beside Thekmer, her hands already moving to examine his injury. Through his armor, she could feel the heat of internal bleeding, the swelling that meant organ damage. "Stop," Morrison commanded. Sarah ignored him. Her fingers found the release catches for Thekmer's chest armor. The Kethri guard could have killed her in that moment. His reflexes were fast enough, his natural weapons sharp enough. Instead, he helped her remove the armor plating. "This is your last warning," Morrison said. Sarah placed her hands on Thekmer's injured side, feeling for the source of the bleeding. There, 2 broken ribs, one of them puncturing something vital. Not immediately fatal, but it would be soon. "I need to realign the bone," she told Thekmer. "It's going to hurt." "More than dying slowly," he replied. "Probably not." Sarah took a deep breath, positioned her hands carefully, and kicked the broken rib with precise, controlled force. The bone snapped back into alignment with an audible crack. Thekmer's mandibles opened in what should have been a scream of agony. Instead, he looked at Sarah with something approaching wonder. "The pain," he said, "it's gone." "Thank you," he added in perfect English. "Thank you for fixing it." Behind Sarah, she heard Morrison cursing. Around them, both human soldiers and Kethri guards lowered their weapons slightly, confusion replacing hostility. But Sarah wasn't done, not even close. "Now," she said to Thekmer, "let me tell you how to save both our peoples." "You want to know why the elders really voted to expel all humans?" Sarah asked, her hands still pressed against Thekmer's side as his breathing steadied. "It wasn't because I touched their child. It was because I succeeded where their healers failed." Thekmer's 4 eyes studied her face. Around them, the standoff continued, but something had changed. The moment of healing had created a pocket of calm in the storm. "The wasting sickness," he said quietly. "The child you treated." "Recovered completely," Sarah confirmed. "Within 6 hours, your healers said it was impossible." Captain Morrison stepped closer, his weapon still trained on the Kethri guards, but his attention focused on Sarah's words. "What wasting sickness?" Sarah looked back at him. "The thing your intelligence reports somehow forgot to mention. The Kethri are dying, Captain. Their children are being born with a genetic disorder that kills them before their 5th year. Half their population is already gone." "That's not our problem," Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It is when they control the only habitable world within 50 light-years of Earth," Sarah replied. "It is when we need their mineral resources to repair our colony ship. It is when they need our medical knowledge to save their species." Thekmer made a sound, a deep rumbling that Sarah recognized as Kethri laughter. "The human speaks truth, but truth is not enough. The elders fear human knowledge. They call it corruption of the natural order." "The elders are scared," Sarah said bluntly. "Scared that admitting they need human help will make them look weak, so they're choosing extinction over cooperation." Morrison lowered his weapon slightly. "You're saying they'd rather die than accept our help?" "I'm saying they're exactly like us," Sarah replied. "Stubborn, proud, and terrified of losing control. The question is whether we're going to be the same way." But even as she spoke, Sarah could hear the whine of more engines overhead. More dropships, more soldiers. Morrison might be listening, but he wasn't the only human making decisions here. "How many ships did you really bring?" she asked. Morrison's hesitation told her everything. "Enough." "Captain," came a new voice through the comm system. "This is Admiral Chen. We need Dr. Chen extracted immediately. The Kethri have activated their defense grid. Sarah's blood went cold. Admiral Chen, her own brother commanding the colony fleet. The brother who'd always believed that the only good alien was a dead alien. "James is here," she whispered. "Admiral Chen requested to lead the extraction personally," Morrison said. "Family ties." Family ties. Sarah almost laughed. James had cut ties with her the moment she'd volunteered for the first diplomatic mission to Velkara. He'd called her a traitor then, too. "Patch me through to the Admiral," she said. Morrison shook his head. "No unauthorized communications." "She's my sister," came James's voice through the comm, apparently having overheard. "I'll talk to her, but make it quick. The Kethri grid is charging weapons, and we won't be able to maintain orbital position much longer." Sarah grabbed Morrison's comm unit. "James, you need to call off the fleet. We can negotiate." "Negotiate?" James's laugh was bitter. "With the aliens who have been holding you hostage for 6 months, with the species that just threatened to destroy 5,000 innocent people. Not happening, Sarah." "They're not holding me hostage. I chose to stay and help them." "You chose to betray your own kind," James snapped. "But that's over now. We're coming down to get you, and then we're taking what we need from this world. The aliens can adapt or they can die." Sarah looked at Thekmer, saw the understanding in his eyes. He'd been following the conversation, his translator implants providing real-time interpretation. "Your brother speaks of taking our world," Thekmer said in Kethri. "The elders were right to fear you." "No," Sarah replied in the same language. "My brother is wrong, but so are your elders. You're both choosing war when you could choose cooperation." "Cooperation requires trust," Thekmer said. "Trust requires time, time we do not have." He was right. Above them, human warships were preparing for bombardment. Around them, more Kethri forces were converging on their position. Sarah could hear them now, the clicking of mandibles, the scrape of chitin on stone, the distinctive sound of plasma weapons powering up. "How long until the defense grid fires?" she asked Thekmer. "Minutes, perhaps less. The elders do not believe in warnings." Sarah's mind raced. The Kethri planetary defense system was built around their ancient crystal spires, massive structures that could focus and redirect energy on a planetary scale. The human fleet might survive the first few strikes, but not if the entire grid coordinated against them. "Unless—" "Thekmer, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Speak." "The child I saved, the one with the wasting sickness, what was his name?" Thekmer's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Velthar, but why?" "And his father?" "Elder Kesrin, the most powerful of the council." Thekmer's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You think to use the child as leverage?" "I think to use the child as proof," Sarah corrected. "Proof that human and Kethri medicine can work together, proof that we don't have to be enemies." "But it would require her to do something that might get them all killed." "Captain Morrison," she said, switching back to English, "I need you to take me to the council chambers, all of us together." Morrison stared at her. "You want to walk into the enemy stronghold with them?" He gestured at the Kethri guards. "I want to walk into a meeting that could prevent a war," Sarah said. "But first, I need you to tell your brother to hold fire for 1 hour." 1 hour, James's voice crackled through the comm. "The grid will be fully charged in 20 minutes. "Then we have 20 minutes to save both our species," Sarah replied. "Will you give me that long?" The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Finally, James spoke. 1 hour, Sarah. But if this goes wrong, if you get yourself killed trying to save aliens who want to destroy us, then you can glass their entire planet with a clear conscience," Sarah finished. "But give me the chance to try." Another pause, then 1 hour starting now. Sarah looked at Thekmer, then at Morrison and his soldiers. "Can you get us to the council chambers?" "Even if we could," Thekmer said, "the elders will not listen. They have already decided." Sarah smiled grimly. "Then we'll have to change their minds, but first we need to pick up someone who can help us do that." "Who?" "A little boy named Velthar, and his father, who's about to learn that sometimes the only way to save your people is to trust your enemies." But as they prepared to move, Sarah heard something that made her blood freeze. The deep, thrumming hum of the crystal spires beginning to charge. The Kethri defense grid wasn't waiting for the full 20 minutes. They had maybe 10 minutes before the first shots were fired. And Elder Kesran, the one person who might be able to stop this, was on the other side of a city full of aliens who wanted humans dead. The crystal spires of Velkara hummed with increasing intensity as Sarah's unlikely group raced through the ancient streets. Thekmer led the way, his newly healed ribs allowing him to move with the fluid grace natural to his species. Behind him came Sarah and Captain Morrison, followed by a squad of human soldiers whose weapons remained lowered but ready. The city itself was a marvel of bioarchitectural fusion, living crystal structures that had grown over millennia, shaped by Kethri hands into flowing organic forms that channeled energy from their world's twin suns. But today, those beautiful spires were weapons, and their song was growing louder with each passing minute. "The charging cycle has begun," Thekmer said as they navigated through a plaza where crystal formations created natural bridges between buildings. "Once it reaches full resonance, even the elders cannot stop it." "How long?" Morrison asked, his tactical display showing the positions of both human forces and Kethri defensive units throughout the city. 8 minutes, perhaps 9, Thekmer replied, but that assumes the elders wish to stop it. Sarah could see crowds of Kethri civilians gathering in the streets, their chitinous faces turned upward toward the charging spires. Some looked fearful, but others showed expressions she'd learned to recognize as anticipation. They believed they were about to witness the destruction of an invading force. They had no idea they were about to watch the beginning of their own extinction. There, Thekmer pointed toward the largest spire, a towering crystal formation that rose nearly a kilometer into the sky. At its base, Sarah could see the flowing architecture of the council chambers. "Elder will be in the inner sanctum." "Will he see us?" Sarah asked. "He will see me," Thekmer said. "The question is whether he will listen." As they approached the council building, Sarah noticed something that made her heart sink. Crowds of Kethri had gathered around the structure, forming what looked like a protective barrier. Their mandibles clicked in unison, a war chant she'd only heard described in historical texts. "They're preparing for battle," she said. "They believe the humans have come to desecrate the sacred chambers," Thekmer explained. "Many have lost children to the wasting sickness. They see human medicine as the cause, not the cure." Morrison activated his comm unit. "Admiral Chen, we're approaching the target building, but there's a crowd situation, hundreds of civilians." James's voice crackled through the static. "Use whatever force necessary to complete the mission." "No," Sarah said sharply. "We're not going to shoot our way through civilians." "Dr. Chen," Morrison said, "we have less than 8 minutes before those spires open fire on our fleet, if talking doesn't work." "It has to work," Sarah interrupted. But even as she said it, she could see the impossibility of their situation. The crowd between them and the council chambers was growing larger and more agitated. Some of the Kethri were armed with traditional weapons, crystal-edged blades that could cut through human armor like paper. Then Thekmer did something unexpected. He stepped forward, away from the human soldiers, and began to speak in the ancient formal dialect of his people. Sarah's translation implants struggled to keep up, but she caught the essence of his words. He was telling them about his injury, about how the human healer had fixed what the Kethri healers could not, about how the pain had stopped instantly when she'd realigned his broken bone. The crowd's chanting faltered, then stopped entirely. One of the Kethri elders, an ancient female whose carapace was scarred with the marks of age, stepped forward. "You speak of the human plague bringer," she said, "the one who corrupted young Velthar." "I speak of the one who saved young Velthar," Thekmer corrected. "The one who could save all our children if we had the wisdom to listen." The ancient Kethri turned her 4 eyes towards Sarah. "You, human, you claim to heal what cannot be healed." Sarah stepped forward, acutely aware of the hundreds of alien eyes focused on her. "I claim to know techniques that your healers haven't learned yet, just as your healers know things that human doctors have never imagined." "Prove it," the elder said. Before Sarah could ask what she meant, the crowd parted to reveal a small figure being carried on a crystal stretcher. A Kethri child, perhaps 3 years old by human standards, his carapace already showing the telltale discoloration of advanced wasting sickness. "My grandson," the elder said, "dying as fate wills it. Can your human corruption save him too?" Sarah approached the stretcher, her medical training automatically assessing the child's condition. Late-stage genetic degradation, organ failure, maybe hours left, maybe less. The kind of case that even human medicine couldn't always fix. But she'd seen this before, in Velthar. She'd learned the key wasn't just to treat the symptoms, but to understand why the Kethri genetic structure was breaking down in the first place. "I can try," she said, "but I'll need to touch him. I'll need to use human techniques that your people consider blasphemous." The crowd stirred, mandibles clicking with agitation. "Let her try," came a new voice, powerful, commanding. The crowd parted again to reveal Elder Kesrin himself with a small figure beside him, Velthar, the child Sarah had saved days earlier. "Father," the child called out in accented English, running towards Sarah. "The Sky Healer, she made the hurt go away." Elder Kesrin looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't read. "My son speaks of you often. He says you have magic that tastes like starlight." "Not magic," Sarah said. "Just medicine, medicine that could save all your children if our peoples could learn to work together. And if we refuse, if we choose to maintain the sacred laws and accept fate's will." Sarah gestured toward the humming spires above them. "Then in 6 minutes, those weapons will fire on my people's ships. My brother will retaliate by reducing this city to glass. Your children will die anyway, but they'll die in nuclear fire instead of genetic decay." Elder Kesrin was quiet for a long moment, looking at his healthy son, then at the dying child on the stretcher, then at the charging weapons that would either save or damn his people. "Show me," he said finally. "Show us all how human medicine works." Sarah knelt beside the dying child, her hands moving to check pulse, temperature, neural response. But as she began her examination, she heard something that made her blood freeze. The crystal spire's humming had reached a critical pitch. The charging cycle was complete. "Elder Kesrin," she said urgently, "you need to stop the defense grid now." "I cannot," he replied. "The firing sequence is automatic. It was designed that way to prevent enemies from stopping it through coercion." Sarah stared at him. "You're saying it can't be stopped." "I am saying that once begun, the grid will fire unless it receives a specific harmonic frequency. A frequency known only to the Grand Elder, who has been in meditation trance for the past 3 days." Above them, the spires began to glow with lethal energy. "Where is this Grand Elder?" Morrison demanded. Elder Kesrin looked at them with something that might have been pity. "In the sacred chamber at the top of the central spire, but the passage is guarded, and even if you could reach him." "Even if we could reach him, what?" "The Grand Elder is dying. The wasting sickness has taken his mind. He may not remember the frequency. He may not even remember who he is." Sarah looked up at the tower of crystal and light that was about to become a weapon of mass destruction. At the top, somewhere in those gleaming heights, was the one being who could prevent the mutual annihilation of 2 species. And he was dying of the same disease she'd learned to cure. The ancient elevator that carried them up the central spire moved with silent smoothness, powered by the same crystal technology that was about to destroy the human fleet. Sarah pressed her face to the transparent wall, watching the city shrink below them as they rose through the heart of the massive structure. Elder Kesrin had ordered the guards to let them pass, but Sarah could see the doubt in their multifaceted eyes. Thekmer stood beside her, his newly healed ribs allowing him to breathe easily for the first time in days. Captain Morrison and 2 of his soldiers completed their small group, a desperate alliance racing against time. "The Grand Elder has ruled for 300 years, Kesrin explained as they climbed. "His name is Zethkalar, and he was old when my grandfather was young. The wasting sickness came to him only recently, but it progresses faster in the ancient ones." Sarah checked her chronometer. 3 minutes until the spires fired. 3 minutes to reach a dying alien leader and somehow convince him to spare both their species. "Has anyone tried to treat him?" she asked. "Our greatest healers have attended him," Kesrin replied. "They say his mind drifts between the present and memories of centuries past. Sometimes he believes he is still a young warrior. Sometimes he speaks to ancestors who died long before I was born." The elevator shuddered to a halt at the spire's apex. The doors opened to reveal a chamber that took Sarah's breath away. The walls were living crystal, grown, and shaped over centuries into patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. At the center of the room, surrounded by flowing formations that looked like frozen water, lay a figure on a raised platform. Grand Elder Zethkalar was ancient beyond anything Sarah had expected. His carapace had taken on the translucent quality of aged crystal, and she could see the faint luminescence of his circulatory system beneath the surface. But his four eyes were clouded, unfocused, staring at something only he could see. "He has been like this for 2 days," Kesrin said quietly. "The healers believe his spirit is already walking with the ancestors." Sarah approached the dying Grand Elder, her medical training automatically cataloging symptoms: advanced neurological degeneration, cellular breakdown at the genetic level, but something else, too, something she'd never seen before in a Kethri patient. "His neural patterns," she said, pulling out her scanner. "They're not random, there's a rhythm to them." "The firing frequency," Morrison realized. "He's repeating it in his mind." "Maybe." Sarah adjusted her scanner to pick up the faint bioelectric patterns emanating from the Grand Elder's brain. "But we'd need to amplify the signal, translate it to harmonic frequencies." "The control chamber," Kesrin said suddenly. "At the base of this spire, if we could connect his neural patterns directly to the crystal matrix." 2 minutes, Morrison said, checking his tactical display. "The fleet is already taking evasive action, but those weapons have planetary-scale targeting capability." Sarah looked at the Grand Elder, then at the control systems built into the chamber walls. Crystalline interfaces that had been designed for Kethri physiology, not human hands. But the basic principles were the same as any bioelectric system. "I need to link his mind directly to the spire's control matrix," she said. "But first, I need to treat the neurological damage, clear his thoughts enough for him to remember the shutdown sequence." "The sacred laws," Kesrin began. "Will matter exactly nothing if we're all dead in 90 seconds, Sarah interrupted. She was already moving toward the Grand Elder, her hands reaching for the neural interface points at the base of his skull. But as her fingers touched the ancient alien's carapace, something unexpected happened. His clouded eyes suddenly cleared, focusing on her face with startling intensity. "You," he said in English so archaic it sounded like poetry. "The star-touched healer, I have seen you in the dream paths." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Grand Elder, I need you to stop the firing sequence, your people and mine." "Our children playing with forces beyond their understanding," Zethkalar finished. "Yes, I know. I have watched this moment approach for decades." His voice was stronger now, more focused. The neural contact seemed to be clearing his mind, pulling him back from whatever distant shore he'd been drifting toward. "You can stop the weapons?" Morrison asked. "I can," the Grand Elder replied. "But first, star-touched healer, you must answer a question that will determine the fate of both our peoples." 60 seconds, Morrison warned. Sarah knelt beside the ancient being, her hands still in contact with his neural interfaces. "Ask." "Why do you heal us? Your own kind calls you traitor. Ours call you blasphemer. You could have stayed with your people, lived in safety. Why risk everything for creatures your species considers inferior?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she'd never said it out loud before. "Because pain is pain," she said simply. "Because a child crying is the same sound, whether they have skin or chitin. Because intelligence and compassion aren't limited to one species, and suffering isn't either." The Grand Elder's eyes closed for a moment, and Sarah felt the neural patterns under her fingers shift, organize, clarify. 30 seconds, Morrison shouted. "The correct answer," Zethkalar whispered. Then louder, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries. "Velkara Defense Grid Authorization Zethkalar Prime 779. Emergency shutdown. All weapon systems stand down immediately." The humming of the crystal spires, which had become a constant background noise, suddenly stopped. The silence was so complete it felt like a physical presence. "Fleet command to ground team," came James's voice through Morrison's comm. "The weapons grid has powered down. I repeat, the Kethri weapons are offline." Sarah felt her legs give out with relief. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. But as she looked at the Grand Elder, she realized their victory was incomplete. His eyes were clouding again, the neural patterns under her fingers becoming chaotic once more. "The treatment," she said urgently. "I need to stabilize his condition before we lose him again." "Do what you must," Kesrin said. "The sacred laws have already been broken today. Perhaps it is time for them to be rewritten." Sarah worked quickly, using techniques she'd developed treating Velthar and other Kethri children. The genetic damage was extensive, but not irreversible, with the right combination of human medical technology and understanding of Kethri physiology. "There," she said finally, her hands still glowing with the faint energy discharge from her medical kit. "The neurological damage is stabilized. He should regain full cognitive function within hours." But even as she spoke, Sarah knew the hardest part was still ahead. They'd prevented one war, but the underlying problems remained. The human colony still needed resources. The Kethri still needed medical help, and both sides still had leaders who preferred conquest to cooperation. "What happens now?" Thekmer asked. Before anyone could answer, Morrison's comm crackled to life again. "Ground team, this is Admiral Chen. I need Dr. Chen extracted immediately. The Colonial Council has voted to proceed with Resource Acquisition Protocol 7. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Protocol 7 was the military euphemism for total planetary occupation. "James, no," she said into the comm. "We can negotiate now. The weapons are down. The Kethri are willing to talk." "The Kethri just threatened to destroy 5,000 colonists," James replied. "The Council has lost confidence in diplomatic solutions. We're moving to secure vital resources by force." Around the chamber, Sarah could see the faces of her alien companions. Kesrin's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. Thekmer's hand was moving toward his sidearm. Even the ancient Grand Elder was struggling to sit up, his recently cleared mind immediately grasping the implications. "Your brother speaks of conquest," Kesrin said quietly. "Perhaps the elders were right to fear human intentions." "This isn't what I wanted," Sarah said desperately. "This isn't what any of us should want." But she could already hear the sound of more dropships approaching. Heavy transports this time, carrying the equipment and personnel for a full occupation force. "Dr. Chen," Morrison said, "I have orders to extract you by force if necessary." "And I have a duty to protect my patients," Sarah replied. "I'm not leaving." "Your patients?" Morrison gestured at the Kethri around them. "These aren't patients. They're enemy combatants who just held a gun to our heads." "They're people," Sarah said firmly. "People who are scared and dying and trying to protect their families, just like us." But as she spoke, Sarah realized that stopping the immediate crisis had only revealed the deeper problem. Humans and Kethri had been talking past each other for months, each side making assumptions about the other's intentions. The weapons grid incident was just the latest symptom of a fundamental failure to communicate. Maybe there was still a way to fix this. Maybe she could still prevent the war that would destroy everything she'd worked for. But first, she had to do something that would probably get her court-martialed for treason. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I need you to contact Admiral Chen and tell him I'm requesting a formal diplomatic immunity." "Diplomatic immunity?" Morrison stared at her. "You're not a diplomat." "No," Sarah said, looking at the Grand Elder, who was now fully conscious and listening intently. "But I think I'm about to become one." The makeshift council chamber in the lower levels of the crystal spire looked like something from a fever dream. Human military officers sat across a crystalline table from Kethri elders, their weapons holstered, but hands never far from them. Portable translation units buzzed with constant activity as two species that had nearly destroyed each other tried to find common ground. Admiral James Chen sat at the head of the human delegation, his face a mask of barely controlled frustration. Across from him, Grand Elder Zethkalar presided over the Kethri Council, his recently healed mind sharp and focused on every word. Between them, Sarah felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice. "The human position is simple," James was saying. "We need the mineral resources to repair our colony ship and establish a permanent settlement. The Kethri have those resources but lack the technology to extract them efficiently. Cooperation benefits everyone." Elder Kesrin's mandibles clicked skeptically. "Cooperation implies equality. Your ships still orbit our world. Your soldiers still occupy our city. This feels more like negotiation at gunpoint." "Your defense grid threatened 5,000 innocent civilians," James replied coldly. "We responded appropriately." "After bringing a battle fleet to our peaceful world," Zethkalar interjected, his ancient voice carrying centuries of authority. "Tell me, Admiral, would your people respond differently if alien warships appeared above your Earth?" The debate had been going in circles for 2 hours now, with Sarah serving as both translator and mediator. But she could feel the tension building toward another breaking point. Both sides were looking for reasons to walk away, to return to the familiar certainty of conflict. "There has to be another way," she said, standing up abruptly. All eyes turned to her, human and Kethri alike. "We're arguing about resources and territory like we're still living in the Dark Ages, but the real problem isn't what we need from each other. It's what we refuse to give." "Dr. Chen," James warned, "you're out of line." "No, I'm finally in the right line," Sarah replied. "The line between two species that could save each other if they weren't so busy trying to dominate each other." She turned to address both delegations simultaneously. "Humans, we need their minerals to survive, but they need our medical knowledge to save their children from extinction. Kethri, you need our technology to cure the wasting sickness, but we need your crystal engineering to create sustainable colonies that don't destroy entire ecosystems." "Pretty words," said Commander Harrison, James's second in command. "But trust requires verification. How do we know the Kethri won't turn their weapons on us the moment we let our guard down?" Elder made the Kethri equivalent of a snort. "How do we know the humans won't strip mine our world and leave us to die once they have what they need?" Sarah looked around the room, seeing the suspicion and fear that had brought two species to the brink of war. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "Because I'm staying," she said simply. "As permanent ambassador and chief medical officer for the human colony, my life will be forfeit if either side breaks the agreement." The room erupted in protests from both delegations, but Sarah pressed on. "More than that, I propose a joint settlement. Not a human colony on Kethri land, and not a Kethri reservation system. A shared city where both species live and work together, where human doctors train Kethri healers and Kethri engineers teach humans crystal technology." "Impossible," James said flatly. "The cultural barriers alone are exactly what killed Earth," Sarah interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Humans couldn't cooperate with each other to save their own planet. Are we going to make the same mistake here?" Grand Elder Zethkalar leaned forward, his 4 eyes fixed on Sarah with intense interest. "You speak of sharing knowledge, but knowledge is power. Why would humans give us power over them?" "Because power shared is power multiplied," Sarah replied. "A human child cured with Kethri crystal healing lives to become a scientist. A Kethri child saved with human medicine grows up to be an engineer. Both species become stronger." "And if it fails?" Kesrin asked. "If the cultural differences are too great?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Then we all die together instead of separately, but at least we'll have tried something better than mutual annihilation." The room fell silent as both sides considered her words. Sarah could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. The moment when two species would either take the first step toward true cooperation or slide irreversibly toward war. "There would need to be safeguards," James said finally. "Guarantees that human interests are protected. And Kethri sovereignty must be respected," Zethkalar added. "We will not become a subject people." "Equal partners," Sarah agreed, "with disputes resolved by joint tribunals, with shared governance of the new city, with you as the bridge between our peoples," Zethkalar finished. "But the burden would be enormous. Are you prepared for that responsibility?" Sarah thought of all the children she'd treated, human and Kethri alike. All the lives that could be saved if their peoples learned to work together. All the futures that could be built on cooperation instead of conquest. "I'm prepared," she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she heard the sound that would test her resolve. The whine of atmospheric processors cutting through the air above them. Not human ships this time, something else entirely. Morrison was already on his comm, his face pale as he listened to the incoming reports. "Admiral," he said urgently, "we've got incoming ships on long-range sensors. Configuration unknown, but they're big, really big." James stood up, his hand moving instinctively to his sidearm. "Kethri reinforcements." Zethkalar's expression was grim. "No, those are not our ships." Through the crystal walls of the chamber, Sarah could see lights appearing in the sky. Not the familiar blue of human drives or the gold of Kethri vessels, but something else. Something that pulsed with an ominous red glow. "Who else knows about this world?" she asked. The silence that greeted her question was answer enough. In their focus on each other, Humans and Kethri had forgotten that they weren't the only intelligent species in the galaxy. "Contact!" Morrison shouted, his tactical display lighting up with threat indicators. "Multiple large vessels dropping out of hyperspace. There. They're targeting both the human fleet and the Kethri cities." Sarah stared out at the approaching ships, feeling the fragile peace she'd just negotiated crumbling around her. Whatever was coming toward, Velkara wasn't interested in diplomacy. And suddenly, the argument between humans and Kethri seemed like a family dispute compared to the threat bearing down on them both. "How long until they reach firing range?" she asked. Morrison checked his displays. 12 minutes, maybe 15. Sarah looked at James, then at Zethkaller. "I guess we're about to find out if our new alliance can survive its first test." But even as she said it, she could see the fear in everyone's eyes. Whatever was coming toward them was bigger, more advanced, and clearly hostile to both species. The real war was about to begin. The War Council that assembled in the Crystal Spire's command center bore no resemblance to the formal diplomatic gathering of hours before. Human tactical officers worked alongside Kethri defense coordinators, their species' differences forgotten in the face of a common threat. Holographic displays showed the approaching enemy fleet, 7 massive vessels that dwarfed anything either humans or Kethri had ever built. "Sensor analysis coming through," reported Lieutenant Zhang, her fingers flying over her tactical console. "The ships are approximately 4 kilometers long each. Energy signatures are off the charts. And Admiral," she paused, her face pale, "they're broadcasting on multiple frequencies." "Put it through," James ordered. The speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice that sounded almost human, but wrong somehow. Too perfect, too controlled. "Biological entities of the 3rd planet of this system," the voice said. "You have been observed engaging in territorial disputes over resources that belong to the Harvester Collective. Your primitive conflicts end now. Prepare for processing." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "Processing?" Sarah asked. Grand Elder Zethkaller's ancient face was grim. "We have legends," he said slowly. "Stories passed down from the earliest days of our civilization, of creatures that came from the void between stars, harvesting entire worlds of their biological material." "You're talking about the harvesters?" Commander Harrison's voice was tight with disbelief. "Those are myths, ghost stories." "Are they?" Zethkaller gestured to the tactical displays showing the approaching fleet. "Your sensors tell you otherwise." Sarah studied the enemy ships, her mind racing. 7 vessels against the combined human and Kethri fleets. It should have been manageable, except. "Their energy output," she said suddenly. "Those ships aren't just big, they're carrying something that requires massive amounts of power." "Processing equipment," Thekmer realized. He'd remained by Sarah's side throughout the crisis, his loyalty absolute since she'd healed his injuries. "They mean to harvest this world." "Harvest how?" James demanded. The answer came through their sensors as the lead enemy vessel began to glow with malevolent energy. Tractor beam projectors unfolded from its hull, not the precise instruments used for cargo handling, but massive arrays designed for planetary-scale operations. "They're going to strip mine the entire world," Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Literally peel away the surface and process every living thing." The magnitude of the threat settled over the command center like a shroud. This wasn't conquest or occupation. This was extinction on a scale that made their earlier conflicts seem petty. "Combined fleet strength?" Sarah asked. Lieutenant Zhang consulted her displays. 12 human vessels, including the colony ship, 15 Kethri defense craft, against 7 harvester ships that are each larger than our entire fleet. "Weapons analysis?" "Unknown. But if they're planning to process the planet, they must have something capable of overwhelming both our fleets simultaneously." Sarah looked around the room, seeing humans and Kethri working together with an efficiency that would have been impossible just hours ago. Crisis had a way of clarifying priorities. "We have advantages," she said. "We know this world, they don't. We have 2 different technology bases. They're expecting primitive resistance." "What are you thinking?" James asked. Sarah moved to the central holographic display, gesturing at the approaching ships. "They're using tractor beams for planetary processing. That means they need to maintain stable positions relative to the surface. They can't be too maneuverable. The crystal spires, Zethkaller said suddenly. If we could modify the defense grid. To do what? Harrison demanded. Not to fire weapons, the Grand Elder replied, but to create a resonance cascade. Use the planet's natural crystal formations to generate harmonic frequencies that would disrupt their tractor beam arrays. Sarah felt excitement building in her chest, like using the planet itself as a weapon. More like using it as a shield, Zethkaller corrected. Force them to come closer if they want to harvest us, close enough for our conventional weapons to be effective. James was already turning to his tactical officers. Can we integrate our fire control systems with their crystal matrix? Unknown, sir, Zhang replied. But Dr. Chen has experience with Kethri neural interfaces, if anyone could make the connection. All eyes turned to Sarah. She thought of the Grand Elder's ancient mind, of the neural pathways she'd used to stop the weapons grid. The principle was the same, but the scale. I'd need to link directly with the planetary defense network, she said. Not just one spire, but the entire crystal matrix. The neural feedback could be fatal. Sarah, no, James said immediately. I won't let you. You won't let me? Sarah's voice carried an edge of steel. James, in about 10 minutes, those ships are going to start killing everyone on this planet, human and Kethri alike. This isn't about what you'll allow. She turned to address the entire command center. But it's not a decision I can make alone. If I link with the planetary network and it kills me, someone else needs to coordinate the defense. I will, Thekmer said immediately. I have worked with human technology since the healing. I can serve as backup interface. As will I, added Elder Kesrin. My son owes his life to human medicine. The debt can only be repaid by saving both our peoples. Sarah looked around the room, seeing the determination in faces both human and alien. The fear was still there, but it was tempered now by something stronger. Purpose. Unity. 8 minutes to optimal firing position, Morrison reported. Sarah moved toward the neural interface chamber, but stopped when she felt a small hand touch her arm. She looked down to see Velthar, the Kethri child she'd saved, his young face serious beyond his years. Will it hurt? He asked in his careful English. Sarah knelt to his level. Probably, but not as much as losing you would hurt. The child nodded gravely, then did something that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. He reached up and touched her forehead with his small, chitinous fingers, the traditional Kethri blessing for healers. Thank you, Star-Touched One, he said, for making the pain go away. As Sarah entered the neural interface chamber, surrounded by humans and Kethri working together to save their world, she realized that the child was wrong. She hadn't made the pain go away. She'd simply shared it, distributed it among people who cared enough to help carry the burden. And maybe that was what being human really meant. Initiating neural link, she said, placing her hands on the crystal matrix that connected every spire on Velkhara. Let's show these harvesters what two species can do when they stop fighting each other and start fighting together. The pain hit her like a lightning bolt as her consciousness expanded across the entire planetary defense network. But she held on, feeling the support of human technology and Kethri wisdom flowing through her mind. Above them, the harvester ships began their final approach, confident in their superiority. They were about to learn why confidence was a luxury neither humans nor Kethri could afford. The crystal spires began to sing, and their song was one of defiance. Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of New Harmony, the joint human-Kethri city that had grown around the base of the central crystal spire. Below her, children of both species played in the plaza where she'd first been arrested as a blasphemer. Human children with their soft skin and bright laughter. Kethri young with their chitinous armor and clicking mandibles. All of them healthy, all of them learning from each other. The neural link with the planetary defense network had nearly killed her, but it had worked. The harmonic cascade had disrupted the harvester tractor beams long enough for the combined fleets to destroy the alien ships. The victory had cost both species dearly, nearly half their vessels destroyed, hundreds of lives lost, but they'd survived. More importantly, they'd survived together. The medical complex is ready for inspection, came Thekmer's voice from behind her. Her old friend had become her chief assistant, bridging the gap between human and Kethri medicine with the same dedication he'd once brought to warfare. Sarah turned to find him accompanied by a small figure. Velthar, now 8 years old and one of her most promising students. The boy was learning human medical techniques alongside traditional Kethri healing arts, preparing for a future where the distinction between species mattered less than the commitment to helping others. "The new wing looks beautiful," she said, looking at the crystalline structure that housed their joint medical research facility. "Are the neural interface training chambers ready?" "Ready and waiting," Thekmer confirmed. "Though I still think you're pushing too hard. The link with the planetary network left scars." Sarah touched her temple, feeling the faint neural pathways that still connected her to Velkara's crystal matrix. The link had indeed left its mark, but it had also given her something unprecedented: the ability to sense the health and wellness of every living thing within hundreds of kilometers. "Some scars are worth keeping," she said. "They remind us what we've survived." From the plaza below came the sound of laughter, human and Kethri children working together on some project that involved crystal formations and human tools. Their hybrid technology had advanced both species beyond what either could have achieved alone. "Dr. Sarah," called one of the human children, "come see what we built." Sarah smiled, feeling the contentment that came from work well done. The war with the harvesters had ended in victory, but the real triumph was quieter, more personal. It was in the sound of children playing without regard for species, in the sight of human and Kethri doctors working side by side, in the knowledge that two peoples who had nearly destroyed each other had instead chosen to build something beautiful together. She'd kicked a broken rib expecting to cause pain, and instead had healed a wound between worlds. "Come on," she said to Thekmer and Velthar. "Let's go see what the future looks like." As they walked toward the plaza, Sarah felt the crystal spires humming around them, no longer weapons of war, but beacons of hope. The song they sang now was different from the defiant battle cry of 5 years ago. It was a lullaby for the children of two worlds, dreaming of stars they would explore together.